So, Paul, when you mention the name Lauren Boebert in casual conversation in Colorado, how does that go down?
Sneers, groans, laughter.
Paul Karolyi is a journalist and a podcaster.
I mean, at least where I'm at here in Denver, like literally every single person I know hates her guts.
And despite a few jeers from his friends and listeners, Paul is co-hosting a show called Lauren Boebert Can't Lose.
Like, when we put out the trailer for this show, some of the comments we got were, I mean, one of them literally was, "Why are you putting this trash in front of me? This trash about trash."
Boebert is up for election right now. Her primary is Tuesday. For Paul, it was the perfect opportunity to reevaluate a woman who's become a reliable avatar for the next generation of making America great. Lauren Boebert Can't Lose tells the Colorado Congresswoman's story from the beginning. When did you first hear of her? Like, when did she first come on your radar?
I think it was probably the same time the rest of the country did, when she had this very famous moment in 2019.
Gun violence was the focus of a town hall hosted by Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke.
At the time, the presidential primary was in full effect. Former Texas Congressman Beto O'Rourke had just said, hell yes, he wanted to take automatic weapons away from Americans.
Beto O'Rourke used a town hall in Aurora where 12 people were murdered in a movie theater to double down on his promise to buy back all AR-15 and AK-47 semi-automatics.
Lauren Boebert, a gun enthusiast who owned a theme restaurant called Shooters, showed up in a branded T-shirt with a Glock strapped to her waist.
While Lauren Boebert drove 3 hours from Rifle, openly carrying a handgun to confront the presidential candidate.
I was one of the gun-owning Americans that heard your speech regarding, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15s. Well, I am here to say, hell no, you're not.
What unfolded in that scene was her famously confronting him in front of this crowd of people who were victims of gun violence. But she's there, and she just makes this scene by saying, hell no, you're not going to take my guns.
That woman, Lauren Boebert, joins us now live. Lauren, thank you for taking time. What happened? Why did you decide to go confront Beto?
Boebert made this moment last. Here she is on Fox News just a few days later.
So really, our administration, please do not do anything but honor our Second Amendment.
All right, Lauren Boebert, thank you for joining us. You're speaking out against Beto O'Rourke because you disagree. Thank you very much.
How many weeks later did she declare her candidacy for Congress?
Maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Wow.
Not long at all. Yeah.
You know, her approach, looking at that 2019 tape when she's confronting Beto O'Rourke, it seems so stunty. 5 years later, is Lauren Boebert still the same stunty person?
I don't think so, actually.
Really?
I think she learned a real lesson that people have missed.
This is why I wanted to talk to Paul, because he sees something in Congresswoman Boebert that I had not clocked. So are you saying we're on Lauren Boebert 2.0? Get ready.
I don't know if she would say that it's Lauren Boebert 2.0, but I think she's got a new approach, and she's definitely got a new base of support that she's trying to build. She's got to define herself in a new way to make a new pitch for being sent back to Congress.
Today on the show, is it true that Lauren Boebert can't lose? And if so, why? I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Washington Wise. Decisions made in Washington affect your portfolio every day. But what policy changes should investors be watching? Listen to Washington Wise, an original podcast for investors from Charles Schwab, to hear stories making news right now. Host Mike Townsend, Charles Schwab's managing director for legislative and regulatory affairs, takes a nonpartisan look at the stories that matter most to investors, including the policy initiatives for retirement savings, taxes and trade, inflation fears, the Federal Reserve, and how regulatory developments can affect companies, sectors, and even the entire market. Mike and his guests offer their perspective on how policy changes could affect what you do with your portfolio. Download the latest episode and follow at schwab.com/WashingtonWise or wherever you listen.
It's hard to imagine a world where we leave future generations with fewer rights and freedoms. The Supreme Court has stolen the constitutional right to control our bodies. Now politicians in nearly every state have introduced bills that would block people from getting the essential sexual and reproductive care they need, including abortion. Planned Parenthood believes everyone deserves access to care. It's a human right. We won't give up and we won't back down. Help ensure the next generation can decide their own futures. Donate to Planned Parenthood. Visit plannedparenthood.org/future.
So let's describe Lauren Boebert's origin story. She was best known for running a restaurant where the servers wore guns strapped to their thighs. It was known as Shooters. And you can find TV footage from 2014, which you did.
Oh my God, it's so good.
You're about to enter a restaurant where you probably want to make sure to tip well. At Shooter's Grill, open carry has nothing to do with takeout.
It's amazing. It's like a glamour shot of her. It's just like she puts on her blush and then she
fixes her near-perfect hair and puts on her sparkly belt. But she is not fully dressed without her bullets and her 9mm semi-automatic.
It's just really doing a lot for her. How did she start down this path?
What happened was, and this is all in her book, My American Life, she says that her husband and her, they went through some hard times when he lost his job. He worked in natural gas in Western Colorado. That's a big industry there right now. It's probably the biggest industry. That's why he moved there. That's how they met. She was working at Burger King. He came in with some of his buddies. Their eyes met. He was 22 or 23. She was 16.
Normal.
It happens, I guess. People are going to have their own opinions about that. But they got married, they had 4 kids, and then he lost his job. But he ended up working in Texas half the time. So he would do these 2 weeks in Texas, 2 weeks back in Rifle stints. And so she's raising the kids, but she still wants to contribute to the family. So there was a restaurant space in downtown Rifle, and she had experience working at McDonald's and Burger King. So she had some relevant experience, and they decided to open their own place. And they had this big idea, gun-themed restaurant in a town named after a gun, and it caught on. It caught on. Everyone I've talked to, all the locals that we talked to while we were there, they were like, this was a popular place.
Boebert was in the restaurant game for a few years before she had that viral confrontation with Beto O'Rourke. That was the beginning of her bid for Colorado's 3rd congressional district.
It was very bold of her to do this because the 3rd district had a pretty popular congressman, Scott Tipton. He was elected first in 2010 with the Tea Party wave. So he's a pretty far-right Republican.
Freedom Caucus-y kind of guy.
Mm-hmm. And he had come in and he had won 4 straight elections, and he, had traveled all over the state. People liked him all over.
Did anyone expect her to win the primary against this guy?
Not even close. Everyone thought Tipton had it locked up. It's funny. One of my sources I talked to about this was the reporter for the Denver Post. He said he was covering the primary election night in 2020. And he called up Tipton's campaign manager when the first results came in at 7 p.m. And Tipton's campaign manager not only was shocked by the results, but he wasn't even paying attention. He was at a country club in Denver watching his kids swim.
Huh.
And he was like, I really need to get on this. Something's happening here.
Wow. So Lauren Boebert wins the primary, and then she goes on to win the district. And she's building this brand for herself. How would you describe Lauren Boebert's brand at the time? The thing I remember is guns. She was talking about, I'm going to bring a gun onto the floor of Congress because we should be able to do that.
It's hard to talk about for people who didn't grow up around guns, and I didn't, but you can see it. It's just like an everyday thing for folks. So that was her brand, was just confronting Democrats, I think, because she and Scott Tipton didn't have a lot of big policy differences. And she herself, she'll tell you, she didn't even really understand how Congress worked. So it wasn't about policy. It wasn't about how she would govern differently. She was just there to own the libs like she did with Beto O'Rourke. That's what the people of the congressional district knew about her because she had been so new on the scene. And so that's what they sent her to Washington to do.
At the same time that Boebert was making a lot of noise in Congress, she was also beginning to be dogged by rumors. Can you explain those rumors? Because they're pretty salacious. The kind of stuff that I'm used to in a different time. They would have potentially brought a politician down.
The rumors, what I heard, and this really was the impetus for the whole series, was our host, Bree Davies, and I were sitting around one day, and we had a friend and contributor to our daily local news show, CityCast Denver, coming in to record on something else entirely. And he was like, I just heard something crazy about Lauren Boebert. I heard that before she got to Congress, she was a sex worker, and that part of how she got herself elected was Ted Cruz was one of her clients.
That is a spicy rumor.
Quite a rumor, right? Like, so Bree and I were like, what? And Bree was like, that's actually like really sexist, I think. That's pretty gross. And then, so those two things together, that's what got me asking people questions.
Yeah.
And what I discovered was that this rumor was part of a set of rumors that were leaked to the press and created this like big moment on the internet right before her 2022 primary. And specifically, there were 3 allegations. There was she was a sex worker. There was she had 2 abortions. And then the third thing was she did meth. For some people, that's a big deal. She's run on family values. I think the whole idea was like, we're pointing out the hypocrisy of this person.
All these rumors went back to a single person, a guy named David Wheeler, who runs a website called AmericanMuckrakers.com. Wheeler had just taken down GOP Congressman Madison Cawthorn, publishing sexual content of the MAGA firebrand that may have led to his primary defeat in 2022.
So after that, David Wheeler felt very vindicated, and he asked the followers that he had accrued through his what he saw as a great success of getting Madison Cawthorn voted out of office. His followers were like, you should do this to Lauren Boebert.
So he's coming in clearly with a strong point of view.
And not just a point of view, but an explicit mission to fire Boebert. At one point, he printed up T-shirts, Fire Boebert, that he was giving away to people in rifle right outside of Shooter's Grill.
Wow. Did these rumors impact Lauren Boebert at all?
Well, it's hard to say how they impacted her. I mean, they certainly impacted her personally. I think she found them very offensive. That's what she said in her appearances after they came to light. She denied all of them. She said it was gross, and then the rumors were fact checked, and most of them were disproven quite easily because David Wheeler, like he calls himself an entrepreneur. Like he's not going out there and looking for like real evidence of the truth. The point I made in the episode was that he's just got a bad case of confirmation bias because he has this motive. So the evidence for these things is like really quite light, but the story was so salacious and it fed into what so many people wanted to hear about her that it went bonkos crazy online. But to answer your question, I don't think it really hurt her that bad because she did win her primary. She was running against this guy who was like not as exciting, not as lively as her, didn't appeal to the Republican voters of the district at that time.
But this primary was not the end of the trouble for Lauren Boebert because her voters in Colorado's 3rd district still had a lot of tough questions for her.
Her actual record, her actual votes, that's where she started running into trouble, especially as we talk about in our 3rd episode, with the veterans in the city of Pueblo, Colorado, which is a huge veteran community. They watched her interrupt President Biden as he was talking about burn pits and how much veterans had been struggling with health effects.
A cancer that would put them in a flag-draped coffin. I know. One of those soldiers was my son, Major Bo Biden.
And about his son's death and sickness.
His son's death, his son who had suffered from these burn pits, and he was promoting this legislation called the PACT Act to expand healthcare benefits for veterans. And 3 days later, after the State of the Union, she votes against it, breaking with many other Republicans who voted for it. It was a bipartisan bill. So the veterans of Pueblo, she lost them with that vote, and she never got them back.
What happened when she faced a Democrat, when it was the general election?
She had a much tougher road against the Democrat, which was surprising because this is a pretty firmly red district in western Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, she won, but only by something like 500 votes.
Yeah, he took it to a recount, and it was 546 votes.
Wow. You know, it's interesting because I, as like an East Coast progressive person, I have a lot of reasons why I might dismiss Lauren Boebert as a candidate for office.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she seems to approach her job as a series of stunts. There are all those rumors we talked about. But I'm struck by the fact that it wasn't like really the rumors or stuntiness that put her job at risk in that first reelection bid. It was the fact that she didn't show up for her constituents in an important way, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think for a lot of people, what they want out of their representatives, results. Some people definitely will still vote for her because they love that she owns the libs. Like, people vote for all different reasons. That's something that I've learned through this project is being a representative means representing people, and people want to be represented in different ways.
Yeah. And some people just want an avatar, and some people want a specific thing accomplished. And you have to worry about both of those people.
You have to worry about them all. You know, politics is complicated now. People have different expectations for their politicians.
After the break, while the walls seem to be closing in on Lauren Boebert in Colorado's 3rd district, turns out she's found a way to potentially stay in Congress anyway. This episode is brought to you by Burrow. Burrow's a new kind of furniture company known for timeless design and thoughtful construction, as well as little details that make life in your space easier. Take, for instance, the Nomad sofa. It's got a sturdy hardwood frame, galvanized steel hardware, making it a solid, durable investment for years. And if you ever need to, say, add a seat or move your Nomad sofa to another place, you can disassemble it and reassemble it easy as pie. No tools needed. You can pick the fabric style, color, arm style, legs, and more, and make your Burrow sofa completely your own. You can even add an ottoman or turn it into a sleeper sofa. I know all this because Burrow sent some furniture my way, and not only was it a snap to put together, it came with extra legs, just in case one day I thought, hey, I could add on here. With over 69,000 ways to personalize, you're guaranteed to get the furniture that'll work for you and grow with you, too. One more thing. What Next listeners can get 15% off their first order at burrow.com/whatnext. That is Burrow, BURROW.com/whatnext for 15% off. Burrow.com/whatnext. This episode is brought to you by SAP. First, the bad news. SAP Business AI will not help you generate cubist versions of your family's holiday photos, but it will help you understand which supplier is best to help you roll out your plant-based packaging in Southeast Asia, or identify the training your junior project manager needs to rise up the ranks, or automate repetitive tasks while you focus on big innovations. So you can be ready for the next opportunity. Revolutionary technology, real-world results. That's SAP Business AI. Okay, so if I'm Lauren Boebert and I just barely eked out a win in my congressional district after a couple years in office, it would be a real wake-up call for me. Was it one for her?
Absolutely.
What changed?
She changed a lot of things. She changed her staff. She started reaching out to Democrats. She was working on a new bill with the senators here in Colorado, John Hickenlooper and Michael Bennett, the Pueblo Jobs Act, which was an effort to bring some money back home to Pueblo and maybe hopefully rebuild some relationships. She's really quite smart. I think people do underestimate her in this way. Like, she did learn from that first term.
So you're saying you saw Lauren Boebert change, and it seemed to me like mainstream political outlets were noticing. Like, Politico wrote a story that was like, you know, she's putting the MAGA thing aside. But it doesn't feel to me like she's putting the MAGA thing aside. Like, why is that?
Well, that was maybe my favorite little artifact of that time that I found for this series, was that Politico story. The headline was, Lauren Boebert ditches the MAGA thing in Colorado. So clearly she's trying to like rebrand herself, be a little bit softer, you know, say, I'm not about the antics anymore. That's Washington, Lauren. Here in my district, here at home, I'm just here to serve you all. I'm just a neighbor like you all. I'm just a regular person. But yeah, I mean, she was not able to fully make that transition because she got in her own way with the whole Beetlejuice scandal.
It happened at the family-friendly show Beetlejuice.
Representative Lauren Boebert from Colorado was escorted out of a Denver theater's performance
after getting complaints about vaping, taking pictures, and causing a disturbance. We just got a hold of the video from inside the theater Sunday night. An incident.
I just remember innocently floating along the World Wide Web, and then this video pops up of Lauren Boebert in a theater with a guy, and just one shenanigan after another. What am I missing?
I think the groping is what got her the headlines and what made the story go nuts. But the thing that turned out to be really quite important for a lot of the people that were her supporters was the way she treated service workers in that video. She's being escorted out of this theater. She puts her finger in a security guard's face, and then according to the theater's incident report, she says, "Do you know who I am?"
Ooh.
And she threatens to call the mayor of Denver, according to this incident report.
No one likes someone who does that.
No, especially not Republicans in Western Colorado, people who respect authority.
So did this get in the way of her pivot?
Definitely. It totally ruined it. She had to completely change direction. She's been scrambling ever since. I mean, between betraying the veterans and this scandal, she had to leave her district. That was her best strategic move left.
Yeah, she used to represent the 3rd district, and now she's running for the 4th district, which, does she even live there?
She does now. She had to move. She didn't live there when she announced it, which was just it was such a media dead zone, you know, between Christmas and New Year's last year. She puts up this video. It's her in her kitchen. She's very small in the shot. And she's just like, after a very difficult year, I went through a divorce that I never thought I would have to do. And it's been just a very challenging political situation. And she kind of dances around the Beetlejuice thing and the embarrassment of it. She announces that the best way for her to continue the fight for the conservative movement is to switch districts and to run in Colorado's Congressional District 4 on the other side of the state on what we call the Eastern Plains.
It strikes me a little bit like restarting the computer. Like, let's start over again.
I could see why people would say that. Yeah, for sure. It's a very strategic move by her.
Because the 4th district is much more conservative, so it's easier to be Lauren Boebert there?
Correct, yeah. She's not going to be having a Democrat leading fundraising across the country in this new district because the Democrats are a non-factor. All she has to do is consolidate the conservatives and win the primary, and then she can waltz to victory in November.
Lauren Boebert has a primary this week. Your podcast is called Lauren Boebert Can't Lose, which implies that you have an inkling of how you think this primary will turn out.
It does. Yeah. There's some indications. I mean, obviously it's not a guarantee that she's going to win, but there's been a poll that came out from Kaplan just a couple of weeks ago that said she was up 35 percentage points on her closest opponent. She's running against 5 people, and not a single one of them polled higher than 5%.
Whoa.
She had 40.
I feel like we're at an interesting crossroads right now with Lauren Boebert, because she's running for election. And you've said that she tried to kind of be Lauren Boebert 2.0, and she does show signs of kind of learning more, how do I do this job? But I'm a little bit wondering, like, will the real Lauren Boebert please stand up? Like, is the real Lauren Boebert the person who's interrupting the State of the Union and doing these kind of stunty things, trying to take a gun onto the floor of Congress? Or is the real Lauren Boebert something else? Or is she both?
I think this is the most interesting question of the whole story, and the exact right question to ask, because the antics, what people call her antics, the confrontations, the owning the libs, the shouting at Beto O'Rourke, hell no, you're not going to take our guns. That, what she was doing was she was making a promise with the voters of her district. That's how I see it. And then once she got to Congress, she did exactly what she said she was going to do. She continued to confront Democrats and maybe not so much work on the policy stuff as well, but she did what they sent her to Washington to do.
She made a scene.
To be seen, to grab attention, to be entertaining on Fox News. And what she's doing now is she's making a new promise to voters. And it's hard to know exactly what that promise is and what she's going to take from it, because it seems like a lot of the support that she's gotten is from the Republican establishment, the Republican leadership in D.C. and here in Colorado. And what voters want from her and what she's promising to do for them, it's a little bit harder to tell. She talks a lot about her faith. She's a born-again Christian since 2009. And in her speeches, as one of our sources who has followed her on the campaign has said, they sound a lot like sermons. Like it's really funny, the contrast between her joking about Beetlejuice and what she did in that we can all see in that video, and at the same time talking about, creating God's version of America on earth and like having a Christian nation. It's just a very weird contrast. So maybe that's the Boebert that we'll see in Washington if she wins this week. Maybe we'll see a very Christian, I don't even know what that would look like.
Paul, I'm super grateful to have you on the show. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Paul Karolyi is a producer and co-host of the CityCast Denver podcast. Their limited series, Lauren Boebert Can't Lose, continues this week. Paul and his co-host actually went out to interview Lauren Boebert at her home.
The number one question I wanted to ask her was, why did you stop wearing your gun on your thigh? 5 minutes in, I had asked her why she doesn't wear her gun anymore, and she's like, it would be a shame for you to think that I'm unarmed.
All right, that's our show. If you're a fan of What Next, the best way to support our work is to join Slate Plus. Going over to slate.com/whatnextplus to sign up. What Next is produced by Paige, Osburn, Elena, Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, and Madeline Ducharme. We are led by Alicia Montgomery with a little boost from Susan Matthews. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.